Andy, are you trying to win the fanciest background award?
I'm trying to utilize any room in my office that I can, and it's this is the basement conference room, so just a pattern on glass doors. Come on.
Well, it looks like we are at 3 o'clock. We are about 4 members short at this point, but I'm assuming that they'll probably check in. We haven't heard from them otherwise. Oh, it looks like Ben has joined us, but he's as an attendee. So, okay, so we have maybe 3 more. All right. We're good there. All right. Well, we can probably get started. Welcome to our second Citywide Advisory Committee meeting. It is that 3rd Thursday of the month already. I do want to do just a couple of items at the very beginning to kind of let you know where we're at. The most important one is that we have switched to the Zoom platform versus the Microsoft Teams. And as part of that, we'll also be live streaming on YouTube. So that means we'll be recording it, and it is live for individuals in the public to be able to listen and see what our committee is up to and what we're reviewing and taking a look at. So just go ahead and know that we are recording, and we will be using Zoom from here on out. And with the Zoom, you'll receive your initial invitation. You'll receive a reminder 1 day prior to the event, and then you'll receive a second reminder 1 hour prior. So we should be giving you those reminders to let you know, hey, that's coming up, and hey, oh, it's right now. So just be watching for those. We also had sent out a document share site for Google Drive for everyone. And we were having a lot of difficulties with the ability for you guys to be able to post on it. And we can't seem to figure that out. So the way to get around that is going to be for you to send any information that you'd like to share to me, and then I can post it on there. And then we all have the ability to view that. And I'm actually putting articles in one area, and then we belong to, as the city, as members of the American Planning Association, we have a publication that we have access to. It's called Zoning Practices. And so I've gone ahead and created a folder for that, but it's got really great 8-page articles. They're really easy to read, they're digestible, and those are all there for you, and they're titled how they are. So if you have a particular interest, you may just want to browse and see what sparks your interest and what you might be interested in. So that is out there. And then I just want to give one special plug to the Boise Neighborhood Interactive. They'll be having a 3-day workshop on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It's a free workshop. They have 60 speakers that will be participating, and they will be really talking about things that are going to come up time and time again as we move through the zoning code rewrite. And as part of that, we do have a couple of our members that'll be guest speakers. So we have Shellen Rodriguez and Byron Falwell will both be presenters at some of those breakout sessions. And then some of our very own project management staff, so Deanna Dupuy and Cody Riddle, will also be presenting there. And then we have some big names too from the city. So Mayor McLean will be presenting. President Marlene Trump from Boise State University will be there speaking. And then we also have District 17 Senate candidate Ali Raby also will be presenting. So if you are interested in that, I'll send a follow-up email and it'll give you that link. It's free. You can participate in which events that you'd like to, but it might be helpful to you, or you may have a specific interest. So the price is right and the knowledge will be plentiful. So we'll go ahead and send that out to you. That is really a good start for all of us today. Did anybody have troubles getting onto the Zoom call? Was it easy? Okay, good, good, good. All right, so we have a little bit of a presentation that we are excited to share with you. And got excited. So we are here for the Citywide Advisory Committee meeting number 2. And I did go ahead and send out an agenda for each one of you. And of course, I'm going to shake things up just a little bit, just because I think it's going to make the momentum of the meeting go a little bit better if we move the rules of engagement up to the very first item. This will just be a way for all of us to be able to communicate with one another and to really show our expectations. These are just some of the very basics that I came up with that I thought would be helpful for each one of us to think about, but we can certainly amend the rules of engagement and add any should you think that we might have missed any. So really, they are arrived prepared and ready to share your thoughts and ideas. Keeping an open mind that thinks about community. And when we say community, thinking about the big picture and the whole. Treating others with kindness, listening actively, and not interrupting others. Being ready to learn, as well as doing our personal best. And I don't know if anybody has any thoughts or anything that they'd like to add.
Andrea, I have a quick thing. I might say, let's remind ourselves to use mute while we listen actively.
Ah, that is a good one.
Very Zoom specific, but anyhow.
We can do that. Okay, anything else that anybody else would like to throw out there? Okay, and then just as I have been on each one of the agendas, I'll go ahead and include those rules of engagement there so that we're reminded of, how we can be an active participant. And then I will always keep, our goal of the process there too, just to give us a reminder of what we're here for. Then next, I think really talking about what the mayor has set forth for our vision and mission, because those are really our goals and what we're going to be striving for. And so these are things that we're going to want to keep in the back of our mind. The vision really sets the course for what we want our city to be, and that has been identified as creating a city for everyone. And that means individuals of all races, all colors, all education levels, all ages, really every single person that lives or interacts in the city as they visit. And, to provide us that roadmap for achieving the vision, really the city of Boise will be creating a city for everyone by embracing our community in the decision-making process through innovating and investing to protect our environment and ensuring a thriving local economy that benefits all. And so we wanted to make sure that we all knew what that vision is, what that mission is, and understand then what those strategic priorities are. And so when we talk about those strategic priorities, the mayor has clearly identified 6 major components of that. And really it's a safe and healthy city for everyone. And what that means is ensuring that our public safety agencies are made up of kind, compassionate individuals that are really committed to serving our community. So they're treating people with kindness, they're treating people fairly and appropriately, and they have the training that they need to do the services that they need to do, because we heavily rely on those individuals. The second one is a home for everyone, and that is really to ensure that there's housing for everyone in every neighborhood at every price point. And so recognizing the fact that housing comes in various sizes and forms, we really still need to focus on the people and the neighborhood that those houses are located in, and make sure that they are located appropriately in regard to transportation, destinations such as retail, and of course, places where we recreate that as well. Then we have third, which is movement for everybody, which is really ensuring that our transportation system provides us with choices to bus, bike, walk, drive, or any mode of movement that would allow people to move from their homes to those services, employment centers, recreation areas, and any location that might be in between those. So we want to move people comfortably, effectively, and make sure that we're giving them a choice on what is right for them, or even the types of services that are available to them. Not everyone has a bicycle, or not everybody has a car, and so we need to make sure that we're providing those opportunities for everyone. A clean city for everyone is an important one. So that's really where we're going to talk about our environment, protecting our clean air and our clean water, making sure that we have quality parks and open spaces, as well as pathways to utilize. So anybody that's interested in the environmental, it'll be the clean city for everyone. As far as the opportunity for everyone, that is really promoting economic prosperity, so that we have employment that offers family supporting wages and benefits. It also includes investing in our education system, and it really ties back to housing and transportation, and starts to integrate some of those arts and history and culture, because we know that each one of those components is is a key foundation to building a strong economy. And then finally, but not last, it's engaging everyone. So we really want to make sure that we are being accessible and transparent in what we're doing. We also want to provide opportunities for collaboration for everyone in the community to be able to shape their future. So providing them with access to a Zoom link, providing them access to YouTube so that they can see really the city interactive and see what's happening and how those decisions are being made so that they can be a part of the bigger picture as well. So just kind of a brief exercise, does anybody have any strategic priorities that they think that really resonates with them? One that they're probably going to participate in more than another, or, maybe they have an expertise on that, or even just an interest.
This is Patrick Spouts. I would say that a home for everyone is probably the one of these that speaks most loudly to me, though I acknowledge that they're all important and worthy.
Thank you.
This is Frances Fuji, and I'd say that I find a clean city for everyone to be very compelling.
Perfect. Thank you, Frances.
Hi there, this is Brad Nielsen. I think probably the one that stands out here the most is this movement for everyone. I've been looking into it and I've noticed that there is no busing beyond Overland Road south. I'm not really sure why we don't provide that, but the south seems to be the most built up area right now, and we're not accessing or not providing transportation for those folks.
Great, thank you. Anyone else excited to share?
This is Byron Falwell. Home for everyone is certainly more in my wheelhouse, but I'm specifically excited about the everyone concept. That's something that the city hasn't really made express before, and that might be one of our biggest challenges, but I'm excited about that wording.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Andrea Danley here. I guess I'm quite interested in the intersection of a home for everyone, movement for everyone, and a clean city for everyone, and the ways that we could grow as a city that would serve those three things together, and how the work of this committee could actually serve those three things at the same time.
Great.
This is Roberta DAmico. I find it difficult to disengage one from the other because I think they're all very integrated.
Yay!
And so but the engaging everyone is probably one to me that can make or break whatever we do and how we help the public understand this. I certainly know that I have a lot to learn, and so that's how I hope to engage, because just to rethink things to make it clear to the public.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Andrea, this is Ian. Similar to what Daniel and Roberta said, I'm interested in kind of the spaces in between each of these categories and opportunities that they might afford us to help tie all of them together.
Great.
Hi, yes, Brad again. In addition to that the movement for everyone, not only the busing or transportation, but how much influence we have on road development around some of these major subdivisions and apartment buildings, and I don't know what our input is going to be as far as road development.
Okay.
This is Marissa, and I would say mine is probably movement for everyone also, not only from public transport and motor or cars, but also from bike and pedestrian. Living in South Boise in the area of impact, either most of us, we drive, which then requires parking, typically downtown, which is where everyone is working, and also is a access barrier because the people of low income also have to spend more money on gas to travel back and forth from the city center out to kind of the outskirts of the city, which can also impact how much money they have to apply to other things like housing or rent or groceries or any of the other things.
Great, thank you.
Andrea, this is Andy Stead. I think a lot of what's been said in covering all of these is fantastic. I think they're important strategic priorities. The last one, engaging everyone, in my mind, is going to be one of our biggest challenges because not only do we have individuals to engage, we have Compass and ACHD, which addresses transportation, and we have CCDC, and we have a mix of plans and a mix of things that all talk about growth, from Blueprint Boise to CCDC's neighborhood plans, et cetera. So engaging everyone is one that I'm really excited about because I think it includes agencies and individuals and people that make it happen. So it's exciting.
Thanks, Andy. Anything else? Okay, that is great. I think we heard a lot of really great comments, and the really big things that stood out was the everyone piece. So making sure that our residents of all different types and visitors as well. So, making sure that we're creating these safe, healthy places for people to go, and really understanding how each one of these all interweaves, they all support one another, and they all strengthen one another. And they're very, very, very interconnected. And I know that a number of you had picked up on that. And so as part of as we do a little bit deeper dive, we oftentimes forget to think about the portion of the conversation that's missing that has to do with the community's vision itself. So what do they value? What do they think about themselves? And so I think we are going to, in our next activity, really kind of engage a little bit further. So what does Boise value about itself? What is Boise valued for by the larger region? So that might be the metropolitan area, the state, the country, and the world, and how it kind of fits in there. And really, how can Boiseans be awakened to all those connections in a way that unlocks their will to engage? And so once we kind of evaluate our community's vision about itself, then we can kind of look at agricultural, land development and preservation, transportation, and begin to figure out how it can really complement and support all of those local systems together. And so how we can be partners in that evolution. So our next slide is really focusing on that community vision, and what do we care about as individuals? What do we care about as groups? What do we care about as Boiseans? And to participate in this activity, we are going to use a facilitator. It's called Jamboard. And so in the chat, we will have an opportunity to take a look at the link there, and it will allow us to participate in what do we care about. And Deanna, do you want to share your screen?
Andrew, did you say Daniel?
No, Deanna.
Deanna, okay, thank you.
Yeah,
God,
me,
it got me
hi.
terrified for a minute.
Yeah, Daniel, you're up.
Where are we at? Here we go. If everyone can see my screen, so you should be able to click this in the chat. Hopefully everyone has access to their chat. And if you click this, it will take you, someone's already started writing, perfect. We're gonna use this as kind of like it's an online post-it board, fun way. So our first question is, what do you value? And if you click this little button right here, it will pop up and you can write everything. So if everyone just feel free to write as much as you'd like about what your values are. And if anyone's having a hard time, feel free to just let us know in the chat and we can maybe help you get to this. Man, you guys are giving us so many.
This is great.
And if you can see, I'm trying to move them around, trying to group some of them.
This is awesome, you guys. I'm starting to see a number of topics that seem to pop up time and time again. We see housing, neighborhoods, transportation, economic opportunity and viability. We're seeing a lot in regard to the environment, clean air, clean water, safety, culture and history, nature and recreational opportunities, education.
Does anyone else want to, kind of share some of what they're noticing? I know it's a ton of many different values, but like Andrea said, they do kind of fall in some categories. Does anyone have some reflection?
Well, the excellent reflection that I'm seeing is that when we talked about those strategic priorities, a safe and healthy city, a home for everyone, movement for everyone, a clean city for everyone, opportunity and engagement for everybody, all of these things seem to be popping up on, what's important to us and really what do we value. So this is pretty exciting that all of these ideas and thoughts, they all fall into those categories, which is going to make it much easier for us to be able to think about these things and understanding that, hey, this is really what we value. An interesting thought the other day I heard, when we are examining our population growth, we're having 7 individuals moving into our metropolitan area every hour, and will continue to do so for like the next 10 years. And so we are really evolving. We're growing very fast. And so we are going to have to make some changes, but we need to clearly identify what's important to us, truly what we value as a community, so that we can preserve those things, that we can enhance those things, and we can protect those things, so that we don't lose that. Even knowing that we are going to have additional traffic, we are going to have to house additional people, we are going to have new companies moving into our area. So we need to make room for each one of those. And this is really, really great, you guys.
So we move to the next one?
Yeah, I think so. So if you go to the very top of your Jamboard, you'll see 1 of 3. If you hit the next frame button, it'll take you to the next one, and it'll let us take a look at the next question, which is, what are your hopes?
Remember, you just click the Post-it note on the left-hand side.
These are good. These are great. So really, again, I'm starting to see a lot of ideas that kind of revolve around the same thing. You know, everybody wants Boise to retain its uniqueness, really retaining its history. Natural environments, sustainability. These are all things that an interesting efficiency, and like managing growth well, avoiding urban sprawl. Those can all kind of be grouped together, growth that matches our infrastructure.
I also saw several, thinking 3 generations out, that this is really, that's a unique thing about zoning, that it's for us, 5 years, 10 years, 20, 50, my great grandchildren. I thought that's an interesting hope. Anyone else have any comments or ideas that this is bringing to their mind?
You guys are quiet.
They're cogitating.
It's nice to see growth being centralized in a lot of these. I'll say that. I think we have a good group of people here that are specifically focusing in on growth issues, and you can see that in these ideas.
I would agree with that, Byron, that, a lot of managing growth well, doing it well, and starting to establish that, yes, Boise is changing, but we have all these really great components that we want to be able to foster and support so that we don't lose that as far as history goes, whether that's our river, our foothills, all of these really great things. Quality design. And I love creating solutions. So thinking big and innovative.
Yeah, Andrea, circling back around to that, it's nice to see, well, unless I've missed a comment.
Start with let's keep it from altogether.
folks are commenting on growth as an inevitability at this point.
Mhm.
Andrea, this is Daniel. One thing I always try to think about when people are kind of, hopes, or where are they in tension? And so I think I see a lot of commonality here, but I also am kind of, part of the work we're going to have to do is to converge, and our differences. And so I see lots in common, and then I think there are some. I'm just kind of trying to looking for where are the things that we're going to have to work to kind of, there's some tension between, lots of housing, or there could be tension between, more housing in many forms and, preserving, maintaining the Boise lifestyle. I mean, I don't think there's a tension, but some people may think those are in tension. So I just think it's, it's interesting to kind of look at that and say, can you find, two stickies that you feel, if maybe not are in conflict, or at least you feel like they're in tension. Like, so lower property tax could be in tension with more transit, which is a theme I've seen. What are some other things that could be in tension? Again, you could argue that the current Boise lifestyle is pretty car dependent. Most people get around in their cars. And so that, again, could be in tension with some of the sentiments for more options to not have to use a car. I think it's kind of interesting to kind of see if you or others see things that might be in tension.
I do. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, and I think, I really appreciate you bringing that up, Daniel, that, some of what our hopes are may feel in conflict, and that's where we asked before, what are your values? So if we could work backwards from, we're hoping for this outcome, and if some of those outcomes feel like they're in conflict, well, let's step backwards to say, okay, where can we find something to move us forward? If it's a shared value for, being able to get to those opportunities, is it that we have economic opportunity where we need it? And so that's where we have to weigh the transportation with the property tax, and those are going to have to be the trade-offs we'll have to think of in this process.
I, like Daniel, have been enjoying all of these. I think all of us are interested in what the posts are showing, and what goes through my mind is, and rewriting an ordinance is the fun part of this process in my mind. Now I'm a twisted mind, but is the codifying of a number of these things. That growth is done sustainably. How do you codify that? How do we adjust our ordinances to pick on these, to highlight and accentuate these really valuable comments? And so that's what the fun part of this whole thing is all about. But things like, there are a lot of things that are not physical, but they're very much a part of an aesthetic or part of an experience. And so we get to start to think about these in that more physical zoning mentality. So really great stuff. Thanks.
This is Patrick. One thing that's really exciting to me is, as Mr. Elliott pointed out at our last meeting, we're ultimately going to end up with a combination of performance-based, form-based, and use-based zoning. And having those three different frameworks really allows us a lot of flexibility to pursue a lot of these goals simultaneously, and even if there's some surface tension between them. So doing this whole process from the start and bringing all of the frameworks to bear really gives us a lot of opportunity to cover much of this ground.
What I'm appreciating is that everything that we've put up on this brainstorming board is reflected in Blueprint Boise. And so I think you have all done a phenomenal job in the past however many years in considering all of these perspectives and really creating a vision and a roadmap that takes it all into consideration.
To follow up on Francis's point there, I think, yeah, and you look at across the board here and all of these different, perhaps conflicting, perhaps not, and just like Blueprint Boise as often has said, no one parcel can fulfill all the goals and policies of Blueprint Boise. But when I think about what our task is here, one of the main challenges that I see, and I think it's kind of reflected on this board, is when we, currently, if a property owner wants to have more density on their land, they will go through a rezoning process in which city council and planning and zoning act in a quasi-judicial role. They act there where they can evaluate all of the elements of the comprehensive plan on that given parcel. Whether or not they do is that's another question, but they have that legal power, even in Idaho where property rights are extremely strong. Now, once we change the zoning, if we do so, to allow more density by legislative action, that power then is removed from city council. And so I don't understand how many of these goals, unless we manage to codify them somehow, along with any increase in density, I don't understand how that power will then be maintained by our elected officials. So that's kind of what stands out to me looking at all of these. Thank you.
Richard, this is Andy Stead again. I think we have a great opportunity as we go through the zoning rewrite to help maintain the sort of the strength of the ordinance. If it's about density, the ordinance can also address things like design review and peer review things, peer review on applications and things of that nature. So I think there's another great opportunity to balance things such as density with design reviews and design guidelines and things of that nature, which the city has a really pretty robust set of guidelines right now. So hopefully that will be one of our discussion points later on in the process.
I would agree with you, Andy, that, density, we will evaluate that when we are talking about, where is the appropriate places for uses to be located? Should we have mixed use developments, and where are those appropriate? And then really focusing on how that looks and makes you feel. Do you feel safe? Are you in a well-lit area? Are you on complete streets that have curb, gutter, and sidewalk, or even maybe bike lanes, on-street parking? All of those types of things, where building entrances are located, where we start to have pedestrian lightings for not only to make you feel safe, but also to allow for other eyes to be able to see you and protect you a little bit as well if you're out at night or those types of things. So design is going to be a big piece of that, and a really good quality design standard gets you a long ways. And I know that Hillary Vaughn and Jessica Aguilar, as well as Andy, have all participated for many years on the design review committee, or helped create some of those design codes that we currently operate under. So they're going to have some really good ideas of what's worked, what hasn't, and what we could have done better or more. And then us as users and our unique experiences, we're all going to have additional input too on how we want to feel as individuals or families. All right. I think we did really, really well with that one. So if we go to the next one, so go ahead and go to 3 of 3. And we're going to talk about, what are we nervous about? What are we concerned or do we have fear of? This is going to allow us to be mindful of when we know what we're valuing and what our goals are. We're also going to be able to identify what our concerns are as we start to implement the mayor's vision and mission and all of those strategic priorities.
I think I'm running out of room on this. But I'm sure there's a lot that are still covered that I can't make room for. I was
Anybody,
hoping we would have less fears than hopes, but that's all right.
anybody have thoughts on some of these?
Andrea, this is Ian. I think one thing that resonates with me is the Anywhere USA and Walgreens on every corner. I really like that certain areas of Boise are devoid of that, and they feel like Boise and not like another city. So how we work to retain that feeling, I think is a good opportunity.
Andrea, I'm just the blue comment, newcomers want to change Boise to what they left behind. And I would say, one of my, I went to high school here, but I've lived most of my adult life in Seattle. And I just saw what I thought Seattle just make a huge mistake in not allowing for enough housing, and just housing prices got so crazy there, and their homelessness problem got so crazy there. So I would say I'm kind of a newcomer who really doesn't want that to happen here. And that informs, so that's my big fear is that we're not gonna have enough housing of all shapes and sizes to accommodate the people who want to live here. And like, if you look at the cities that don't get that right, it's bad.
I think what we can learn from other cities that had expedited growth like Seattle, and what their successes and failures were, is something that we could all learn from, and hopefully the community can learn from, because I know there's a lot of adversity to growth, and it's happening whether we like it or not, which is why we're here.
One of my fears would be that Boise grows to be a place where people don't want to live anymore because we have either outgrown our natural resources like water, we are in a desert, or there's just no room to do the things that we like to do. Like, there's only so many parking spots at Bogus, there's only so much room on the river, there's only one green belt. All the new population affects everybody else's ability to enjoy those things.
One of the things that I thought was interesting was a comment about being priced out. In essence, our kids not being able to buy homes, and our third and fourth generations following us. And unfortunately, that's a large part of the economics, which the zoning ordinance can't control. I look at the north end, where a home used to be less than $100,000, and now they're $800,000. And it's because it's a really desirable place to be. So how do we take the zoning ordinance and try and create that same type of fabric in other areas, and or promote it, enhance it? I think out of these spheres, our opportunities with this ordinance are really wonderful.
Anyone else?
Yeah, this is Brad. I'm born and raised here in Boise, so this is not the Boise that I know anymore. I know change is inevitable, but it is encouraging from the hopes list here, and then from the fears list. It's good to recognize or see that other people recognize the same problems that I do. I like the fact that somebody mentioned a couple of the posts that I put out there. There seems to be so much anger on the roads and stuff. We keep talking about community and getting together and all that. It just seems so much density that I'm not a real social person, so I only see people on the road. So it just seems like we're so impacted by people, I'm trying to word this right. I had a lot of thoughts, but it's all trying to get it out. It's a little difficult. This is kind of emotional for me, seeing all this. Like I said, I grew up here, and this is a different world that we're living in now. But it seems like we're really angry on the road. So I don't know if that's a way to handle some of this so we don't notice all the people. That's going to be my highest priority is to get things to flow a little better around here. But it is encouraging, it is encouraging to see that. I don't know anybody's history here. I really don't. So it's just nice to see that there's the same concerns from maybe somebody who lived here their whole life versus somebody who's just showed up. Thank you.
That are very similar to the Boise that I grew up in. I think it kind of comes down to
the kind of elements that
you tend to notice. If you're on the road a lot, I'm not on the road a lot, so I don't see that same kind of Boise that you see, I think, right now. I think that makes a big difference. I'm also kind of encouraged to see that a lot of our fears and a lot of our hopes in this group are kind of aligning themselves together. That to me indicates that, well, first of all, that I think this group, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, seems to feel comfortable airing their fears. That's something that's kind of vulnerable, something that not everyone wants to do.
Byron, we are hearing that people are having trouble hearing you.
Oh.
I'm not sure what's going.
Can you hear me, Andrea?
I can. It's pretty soft, but
okay.
I am hearing you.
Yeah, apologies. I think it's notable that.
Hey, Byron, it's Daniel. You're way softer than Andrea, and so you're really hard to hear.
Okay. Maybe I'll hold off saying anything for now, and I'll just write it in the chat until I can get that figured out.
Actually, things improved quite a bit at the end.
Okay, maybe I need to move it up here like this.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Brad, to your point, I think it's encouraging that people are in this group at least are willing to put voice to their fears, and that a lot of our fears and a lot of our hopes are in alignment with each other. I don't know that I experienced the same Boise that you do now, or the one that you remember growing up with. And I grew up here as well, but I am encouraged that it's going to take all of us together to kind of help usher in this next age of Boise, because as you said, it is sort of inevitable that it's going to change. But thank you for your point. I understand what you're saying.
And when we share out the Google Drive doc, you'll be able to spend a little bit more time with this. This will be linked. So I know there's a lot of information on here. So if people want to move it around and spend some time with it, they'll be able to.
So this is not a fear, actually, so it's a little misplaced, but I do want to say a few of us were on the last advisory committee, the one day it met. And one of my fears has somewhat been allayed, which I really appreciate. I really appreciate the diversity, especially geographic diversity we're seeing here. and just different people from different backgrounds. So for me, that's a really hopeful sign. So I'm hopeful in clearly we all do have fears, but I'd like to just call that out and appreciate that for improvement, I think. So that's that.
I think I'd like to echo what Richard has said, is that, you know, we have heard from a number of our committee members today, and we've heard that we've had lifetime or multi-generational individuals that have lived in Boise, but we've also had a number of people that have moved here. We have some people from, you know, the central portions of Boise, and then we kind of extend everywhere. So we've got people in the area of impact, Southwest Boise, Northwest Boise. And what's really exciting is that everybody seems to have, you know, similar hopes, and they all really do tie back to what our strategic priorities are. And they even tie back to what our comprehensive plan is. And so our duty is going, as a group, is going to be, you know, creating a toolbox that allows us to build on all of these common values that we've identified and really address all of the fears that everybody has, and see if we can't create balance. And balance is going to be a really big thing for us as we move forward. And so we're going to have to understand that, you know, a lot of these things are interconnected. And when you pull on one, you may impact or affect another. And so we want to be really intentional about how we are creating things, and then really understanding what those implications are, and, you know, how we can design things to be great. You know, I'm seeing a lot of things that, you know, people that have a fear of density or fear that bike routes aren't safe. You know, maybe that's the way we have been doing it. Maybe there's a new way of doing it that is different. Maybe we can design our streets where our bike routes and our pedestrians are safe, where we can create density that is appropriate. It's people scaled, and people feel safe, and they feel like they have unique spaces, and they offer a place for people of all different types and diversity. They foster culture and art and history. All of those things are really important to make a city be great. And I think everybody would agree that the city of Boise is pretty great. We have some really, really awesome places and things that we'd love to share, and we want to keep throughout time.
This is Brad. I have a question that's a little off topic, but I'm just curious. So what are our boundaries of influence? I noticed there's a posted here about bringing communities together like Meridian and Nampa, Caldwell, Eagle, Cuna, everybody with the same vision. But what is our boundary of influence?
That is a really great question. And, you know, our ordinance that we will review and will make recommendations on and write, it will only impact the city of Boise as it exists today, but thinking about in the future that it will also incorporate the area of impact as well. And so we'll be looking at kind of those two lines. But if you take a look back even at the chat, Drew Alexander had posted, you know, that, yeah, the city of Boise is growing quickly, but our surrounding areas are as well. And the city of Boise is an economic hub. We have Boise State University, and we have a number of cultural draws that bring people from the region. And so, you know, their growth has a direct impact on our infrastructure and needs as well. So we will have to be mindful of those types of things as well. So yes, we'll be working on creating our own yard and making sure that it looks good, but it's going to have to transition and it's going to have to complement our region as well.
So you're saying that it's the city limits that are influence.
That's correct. So
Okay. Because there's so, like you said, there's so many things going on outside of the city limits that are drawing resources from, the city. And it just seems like there's less room to develop within the city, and outside of the city is where everything's blowing up and not being monitored. I mean, as the same. So seems like the Wild West outside the city limits, and anything goes. So who has influence over that?
So you would want to look at whatever municipality has jurisdiction over that. So that could be anything from Garden City to Star, Eagle, Cuna, Meridian. But it could also be the unincorporated Ada County as well. And I don't know if you've been following, but the Ada County commissioners have really kind of stepped up recently and said, hey, we only have so much infrastructure and we need to start to plan better with the cities. And so they've recently come to the table and have been a pretty active participant. And as we move through this process too, we're going to be soliciting information and ideas from our local agencies, because Andy had mentioned earlier, we aren't just talking about the city of Boise. We have Suez Water, we have Idaho Power and Intermountain Gas, we have the Ada County landfill that is responsible for all of our waste. Our water within the Boise River does not stay in city limits. It doesn't know boundaries. And so, that water comes from somewhere and it goes somewhere. So we have a lot of responsibility as we draft this.
And
Andrea, could I chime in just real quickly? I've tried to largely listen. Brad, just one comment on that. As you think about the zoning ordinance, we don't have a lot of vacant ground left in Boise. You're right, but we do have. There is quite a bit of vacant ground in our area of impact, say in the Southwest, and then sort of that East Columbia Micron area. So as you're thinking through this entire process, the rules, regulations, standards that you come up long-term would apply to those areas, I guess.
So Andrea, this is Esther.
Yes.
Just a quick comment, Brad. I don't know if you've spent any time reading the Blueprint for Growth. I don't know the proper name. It's been in existence for quite some time. And if I recall, and this was some time ago, if I recall, the goal was to get other cities to sign on to that plan. And so I think, in terms of foundation, the cities and this effort that we're undergoing is obviously different. And I don't know, maybe this is too far ahead, Andrea. I don't know if you could speak to this, but as we progress with the rezone, would the city at any time entertain the idea of maybe going back to Blueprint and seeing like, okay, are there opportunities for updates?
Well, let me see if I understand your question correctly. So are you asking, is there an opportunity to go back and evaluate Blueprint Boise, which is our city's comprehensive plan?
Well, because we'll work on this rezone, right? And who knows what will transpire from these efforts. But would we be going back into the Blueprint for Growth plan and making any changes, or would the city go back and consider making any updates to it if there's anything that significantly changes from these efforts? Oh, I'm sorry, Richard. Blueprint for Growth, not Blueprint Boise.
Oh, okay. So Blueprint for Good Growth was actually, it began with ACHD, understanding that the transportation infrastructure could only handle so much. And so they wanted to get all of the jurisdictions together to really look at what their comprehensive plan said and ask them and hold them accountable to what they had agreed to. But a lot of people kind of fell off the wagon. You know, I think it's always a goal if we can collaborate and get different people at the table and looking at things. But that would really take a lot of political will. So that would really be up to them in regard to that.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Andrea, I mean, I think it's one way I think about our relationship to the rest of the region, and you know, it may be a little bit simplistic, is I think the Valley is going to absorb a certain number of people, and just because because this region is attractive for all the reasons that we know because of employment. And so the question is, are they going to be how many of them are going to end up in Boise versus how many of them are going to end up on the edges of the urban area? And so if we can figure out a way that we can maintain what we love about Boise but allow more people to live within Boise because we have infrastructure and we can fit them, then they're not going to end up on the edge. And so I think that's sort of part of what we can, and if we can do it in ways that they can get around and, get to the job and get to the school and get to the grocery store without having to jump in a car, then that, I think may address, some of Brad's concerns about, some of the wackiness out, in terms of congested roads. It may not solve it, but at least give people, an alternative. But I do think it's worth that. I think if we were able to come up with a plan that we agreed on that allowed more growth to happen within Boise city limits, then I think just because of economics and the way regions work, it just means there's going to be less development that happens at the edge.
I guess I would dispute that. I think it's good that we have this conversation maybe now, so we don't have to keep having it later. Just very briefly, I think that there would be a lot of situations where that would be true, but I don't believe that the Treasure Valley has kind of the dynamics in which if we allow more growth in one area, less will happen in another. I believe that we have to make determined choices at each area, and that's the only, in terms of what we think we should have. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have more density in Boise. I'm just thinking that we should have more density in Boise only because we want more density in Boise, not because we think that will keep Star from, moving on their plans to become a city of 200,000, which they have. I just want to put that out there. I really hope we will focus on the values for every kind of land use that we consider in and of itself, but not be under the impression that that will prevent more growth somewhere else. Because I just don't think that will happen in Boise or the larger Treasure Valley right now. There's just too many people who want to move here. Anyway, I'll shut up on that one.
This is Brad. I was curious about accountability for those who are developing this area. There's been a lot of big names that have popped up or become big names in the last 5 years. We're talking our Corey Bartons and the Hubbles and the, Mark Bottles and the TOK and, Van Ocker's been around forever, but he's sold off now. But how much accountability do they have for what they are doing to the properties as far as road development? We seem to be putting big subdivisions in on both sides of the street, and we're still driving down a single lane or double lane road, and sometimes without even a stoplight. So at what point do the developers become responsible for what they're doing out there?
So what happens is once we receive a development application, we send out a transmittal to all the agencies that would be impacted by that. And they all have their own code similar to what we do. So they have their tools to implement what their goals are. And so they let us know what would be required as part of their code. So we're unique in the fact that ACHD has control over our roadways and all the roadways within Ada County. And so they have some guidance as far as, you know, the structural pieces of that. So how that roadway is constructed, how wide it is, whether curb, gutter, and sidewalk is required. But the city can also have, you know, some say in regard to that. Unfortunately, we kind of have to collaborate with them, that it will never always be our way because we don't own nor do we maintain those roadways. And because they have that, you know, that's their ability to limit what is required. So if we're talking about on some of our busier roadways, which we'll call collectors or arterials, you know, they may only be responsible for doing sidewalk, or they may say that sidewalk is inappropriate and so they're not required to do anything. And so we really have to think about, you know, how is transportation impacted? And so we'll ask them going throughout the process to participate with us as well, so that we can, you know, get that collaborative vision going so that we get a seamless system. I mean, oftentimes the best way that I can explain it is, you know, a development goes in and they do their infrastructure. So they're kind of one piece of the puzzle and they do that piece of the roadway. And then another development goes in. So sometimes it ends up sporadic until all of the pieces are laid out and put together. And then we have a larger picture. But sometimes that doesn't always work.
This is Patrick. I want to add one comment to what Richard and Daniel were discussing. And their discussion kind of is looking at second order effects, whereas we do this and then something else happens elsewhere, and that's an important piece. But I also want to focus that one of our principles, as put down by our mayor, is a home for everyone. And a first order effect is if people would like to live in Boise, making a home available for them, just that in of itself is a good thing, full stop, especially for the people that would be our new neighbors. So the principle by itself is a benefit without even having to resort to other side secondary effects.
Andrea, this is Andy Stead again. One of the things I want to caution us all to maybe steer clear of is the notion, because there's two sides of the story, that developers don't pay their way or developers do pay their way. And maybe part of the process here is learning about when the highway district assesses a project, the developers are assessed an impact fee. In addition to paying for all the infrastructure and roads and whatnot within their developments, there's an impact fee that goes beyond the boundaries for the highway district to use. We're here to write and rewrite and update and inspire the ordinance. And I think we can tailspin and get really off track if we think if we think we're going to solve that problem. That problem is a highway district problem. And it does have issues, but they are addressing it much like the city addresses impacts on developers when they develop housing and homes and apartments. They pay parks impact fees, they pay all kinds of different impact fees. And that is to, quote, equalize or make the developers pay their way. So let's chat about it briefly, put it in our back pocket, and let's move on to make sure that we get this ordinance so that it really becomes a powerful tool for protecting Boise and directing growth in really smart and exciting ways, so that all of the thumbnails that we've just spent over an hour pinning up get close to being realized. It's so I think, you know, that's my 10 cents. I've only been in this industry for a few years, so I still have lots to learn.
I had a comment on Brian's. So the impact fees, I mean, they're paid, but they're not necessarily used. Most of the time, they're not used in the area in which they're paid. Like Southwest Boise impact fees can go to Eagle. So that's one issue over ACHD. But the other is that widening roads can also incentivize growth in areas where it might not be the best place for it. And so just because you widen from 2 to 5 lanes, you might reduce your travel time or your congestion, for the first 3 years until they decide that they're going to build out down that road. They'll put in more subdivisions, and then you're right back to where you started. And that also takes money off the tax rolls because of the increased right of way, which can increase property taxes. But I would love to talk to you about ACHD, because they're like my favorite agency. So maybe we can do that some other time.
Andrea, this is Frances, and I'm just wondering, is there any documentation or any studies that we can look at that have projected population growth for Boise and the Treasure Valley out, say, 10 years, that the Boise Blueprint or Blueprint for Boise or the comprehensive plan is based upon, so that we can see what kind of population the city is thinking it will be accommodating over the next several years.
So yes, we can certainly provide some of that information for you. So the Community Planning Association of Idaho, COMPASS, is our regional metropolitan planning organization. And they have some projections for us, and we try and work with them to calculate what we believe our growth will be. And each agency has an opportunity to provide that. So we should be able to provide you with information in regard to Boise alone. And then we could even give you the larger perspective because, as we've noted, we are impacted by our surrounding neighbors. And so we can provide some of that to you as well. And we should be able to provide you with where we're at today as well. So, maybe for next time as some of our materials will show you what our population looks like today, what it's projected at 10 years in the city of Boise, and then we can look at it regionally as well so that we have a better understanding of what we think's coming our way.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Frances, one thing I would just add quickly is that I think some of those planning assumptions are being revisited post-COVID. And so that certainly, the Boise Valley, the Treasure Valley has gotten relatively more attractive, apparently, given what's happened in the real estate market since COVID has happened. And so I do think you could think of reasons why we might be revising some of those estimates upward based on what happens here over the next year or two.
Yeah.
Hey, this is Shellen. I wanted a quick clarification. Marissa, we haven't had an opportunity to meet, but were you being facetious or serious when you said ACHD was your favorite agency?
Oh, no, it is. I watch them every week. Just from a human behavior perspective, plus the amount of power and control they have over the valley, and people don't realize how much influence they have.
Okay, I just had to understand. I haven't heard that often, so
it's weird.
Clarification.
It's weird.
It's great. That makes the world go round.
Yeah.
Andrea, one thing I think I'd like to state that I think is worthwhile for this early into the process, and we've already started keying in on some of these, is that there needs to be a bit of an acknowledgement that we truly are in a bit of an environment of constraints compared to a lot of cities in the States when it comes to writing zoning ordinances. Those constraints come from the division of government, like we've already talked about. It comes from policy limitations at the state level. But I think what's upon us to do is try to be a model for other communities that might be like us, to be innovative and solution driven, to try to overcome some of those constraints, but not try to reverse them or solve them or ignore that they exist in our work. So, and I think that was reflective on some of the Jamboards, so that was good to see.
No, I think that that is perfect. That really sums it up, that, you know, we want to be big, we want to be bold, we want to be innovative, we want to think about the future and the big picture, and taking all of what we value and then what our goals and aspirations are, and acknowledging some of our limitations and our constraints that we have, whether they are organizational or agencies. It might be topography. We have a lot of things that we may not be able to change. But I also want us to be thinking about what happens if they do change. You know, let's create something that not only exists for today, but exists for that long term, you know, really thinking big. And that actually leads me into my next slide, which is pretty great. So Donald Williams was an American astronaut, and he said, "For those who have seen the Earth from space, the experience most certainly changes your perspective. The things we share in our world are far more valuable than those which divide us." And I think from the exercise that we did, you know, we can really identify that. And even taking some of the practical thoughts that some of you had was, you know, maybe we get into the details and we're looking at something, but if we take a step back and we look at it from a larger perspective, we look at it from the metropolitan area, maybe we look at it at the statewide level, maybe we look at it how we are contributing globally, that we have a really unique opportunity to create some of those innovative solutions. And so we are getting close to our time. So I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about how we can help you share information with your groups, what information that, you know, you would like to see from us, and what might be helpful to others too. Is there social media posts? Is there handouts? Are there educational materials? How can we help you and help others spread the word and to participate and get them interested in coming to the table?
This is Roberta, and I don't know if anyone has been following, but lately Idaho Matters has been doing a series of shows focused on growth in the Valley. And if there was a way to have someone from either the city or from this group, you know, talk about where the city is going and the opportunity for citizens to engage, be a great opportunity.
Great, thank you.
Andrea, this is Frances. I noticed in the comprehensive plan that you've engaged with many of the homeowner associations across the city for your planning. And I'm wondering, what active connections do you consistently have? What kinds of communication frequency and methods are you currently using? And are connecting with these associations something that you'd like the panel or the committee to help with?
Really, so we have an entire neighborhood planning section, and then we also have Energize Our Neighborhoods component to the city as well. And so those two focus on communication between neighborhood associations and the city, and they're able to communicate their wants and their needs. And then we have the Energize Our Neighborhood, and so they have infrastructure grants or capital grants that they can give to neighborhoods for the creation of parks or infrastructure or things that contribute to the larger city and the larger community. And so we have regular communication with those, and we'll continue to do that. And so we do consider them, one of our kind of a partner agency, even though they are not a formal agency, but they are a component of the city of Boise. And so we'll communicate regularly with them, and we'll communicate via our social media to them. We'll do regular transmittals to them so that they have information to consider. And then I don't know if on our website for the zoning code rewrite, we also have a section of, hey, are you an organization or a group or an individual that would like to meet with a planner? If they can click on that book or that button, or you can, and request one of us to come out and tell you a little bit about it. And our other thought is that we'd like to get you geared up with the information that you need. So maybe you have the materials that if you are at a soccer game, that you can communicate with, the other soccer parents, and you can communicate with your community, or whether that's your church, all of those different people. So you can start to share that information out. And our hope is that, you'll let us know what you need from us so that we can give that to you and make sure that we're giving you everything that you need as well.
Francis, also, so like Andrea said, we work with neighborhood associations, which are usually a larger geography than a homeowners association. And I think for probably some of the neighborhood association presidents who are on the call who live in areas with homeowner associations, it is, if you have a connection with your homeowners association, if you're part of their email list, that would be a great place to share information to them. At the city, we try our best to maintain relationships with HOAs, but most of our communication goes with the neighborhood association, which is that larger geography. And if any of the other neighborhood association folks have input on that, that would be great too.
This is Esther. I sit on the Collister board, and that's our neighborhood association board. I actually am the planning and zoning committee member. And so the city, what I can say is the city has done a really great job in the last couple of years communicating on a regular basis with at least our association about city efforts on all levels. So, and I've been involved with the Collister Neighborhood Association since 2006. No, actually I moved to the area 2005. And I would say that there has been huge improvements in communicating, at least with our neighborhood. And we do try to the best of, as much as we can, to get that information out to our neighborhood members.
And if you can't think of anything now, that's absolutely fine. If you do think of something, let me know, because we want to get you geared up right.
So this is Chris Vanderstow. I have a quick suggestion. So I am one of the few renters on the group, and there's a few rental sort of like organizations and things that I'm connected with. So I'm wondering if there are ways to have just like maybe a short or like quick to read thing for reasons why members of some of these groups might want to either attend or participate in the meetings and give their own feedback, or like just short summaries of, what happens at the meetings that can be sort of brought back to these groups, so that there's something that's maybe a little bit more official than just like me trying to remember everything that happened over 2 hours, that can be sort of easy to share and easy to sort of collect feedback from to bring back.
Perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize Chris's point. As a neighborhood association person, I mean, I've rented, much of my life, but now I see how difficult it can be, especially when you have a new, kind of large rental complex or something that's in your area. It's just really, really challenging to get people interested. And so any kinds of hints or help as to how we might do that in terms of, I think part of the problem is people who own homes tend to identify themselves as homeowners. And when I rented, I didn't really identify myself as a renter. I identified myself as somebody busy with other things. So yeah, any further help with that, we could.
Great.
Now, and as we go forward, knowing what it is we want to share with our audiences through these communication methods is really going to be important. That this is not going to be an overnight process, and that it is, it's complicated with all the different groups that are involved. Some of what was shared on the Jamboard is a lot of what you hear from people in communities, and how that information, particularly the discussion that was presented today, and lay the groundwork that everyone here is looking at how complicated it is. So I'm gung-ho for sharing information, but knowing what it is that we as a group want to share, I think that's going to be really important.
Okay, perfect. All right. And then I want to just kind of walk through a little bit about what's happening next, so everybody kind of knows, so that, if you are asked or you want to know what's coming up next, we are going to set a public kickoff event. We'll have two, November 5th and November 7th. So November 5th is a Thursday, and we'll do that in the evening to allow everybody the opportunity to see that. And then we'll also do another one on Saturday, probably mid-morning, to give people a different opportunity. Both of those will be recorded, and so they'll be available to be posted. So we'd encourage you to participate in those. Ultimately, it's going to talk about, what's in the process and how we're going to move forward, and how everybody can participate. So we'll do our public kickoff scheduled for November 5th and 7th. We will do, at the same time, we're going to release a community survey, and we're going to ask everybody, hey, what are the strengths and weaknesses of the existing code? And so hopefully we're going to get some really good feedback from that information. And from that information, we'll be able to compile kind of a diagnostics report. And so that draft diagnostics report will also be released. And it's kind of a summary of what we heard for recommendations for those improvements. So, where can we do better? Where have we missed the mark? Where has the city evolved and our code hasn't? So really bridging that gap. So we'll be working on that. And so we'll also release that back to you for your review to take a look at. And so you're going to be able to bring your personal experiences and say, hey, this is where we have failed, or this is maybe, we haven't, because we want to know, does that draft diagnostic report capture everything that it needs to? Because it may not. And so we may need to identify some additional things that we need to look at to be big and bold and innovative, and to really hold on to what we value, and to really protect all of those things that are so important, that make Boise unique and make Boise Boise, because we don't want to lose that. So that's really what is coming up next, going through the pipeline. And what I'll do is, just similarly to what I did to the last meeting, is I'll give you a synopsis, kind of a meeting minutes of what we talked about, give you some of these dates. We'll give you some of the links for some of the information that you are looking for. And then we can bring some of that material that you'd asked for back as well, so that we can review it at the Citywide Advisory Committee meeting number 3 that we'll hold in November. So
Andrea, I'm sorry. When we talk about access and we talk about sharing information and getting the public involved in these efforts, I'm interested in knowing when outreach will occur. I'm assuming the city will have some kind of outreach material that you'll send out, and then the plan is that we would share that with other folks. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And so when do you guys plan on having this out? And the reason why I ask is because in the past, I have seen things come out a week or 10 days prior. And sometimes that can be a challenge. Granted, we're dealing with COVID and people may not be as busy as they were prior to COVID. So that's one question. And then the second question I have is if the city is interested in obtaining input from all members of the community, has there been any consideration in providing this information or the survey in a manner that can be completed by individuals who may not speak English? And then how are you guys addressing potential access issues if it's going to be an online survey?
Good. So yes, we have discussed all of those types of things through our public engagement endeavor, and our community engagement team has been really great about looking at some of those things. And so everything will be in English, and then there'll also be a translation version that it goes to Spanish as well. We'll also have written materials available at our libraries and those type of things. If somebody, we may have a group that may not have access to the internet or anything like that, let me know, because we can certainly deliver packages to where they're handwritten. Not everything has to be done online. I'm certainly willing to deliver materials and get the materials that we need out and in the right languages and in the right hands. So.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
Andrea, this is Shellen, and I may have missed it, so forgive me. For next steps, the diagnostics and solutions report, what's the timing on that and who's authoring it?
So that will be, we will release that probably 7 to 10 days before the next Citywide Advisory Committee meeting. So that'll give you guys at least a week to review that materials. Clarion and Associates and Kushlan Associates, which is our consultant that we have hired to assist us through the process. And they're actually on the call, they're listening and taking notes and all of that good stuff, so that they're capturing all of this feedback as well. They also were here a year ago and did a number of stakeholder interviews that did that. And then they've done a thorough review of our code as well as our comprehensive plan, and provided their professional expertise in regard to, hey, where is Boise doing really well? Where are they missing the mark? Are there other best practices that could be used? Or, maybe something isn't appropriate for the city of Boise that might be appropriate in Seattle or Portland or Reno or, some of our other local cities. So they'll be authoring that. And so we'll get that to you as well. And so keep in mind that that'll be a draft version from, what they've heard from you, what they have heard from our stakeholder interviews, what they heard from our elected officials as well as our appointed officials. So we talked to the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, the Design Review Committee, and heard what their feedback is as well. And so that'll be integrated. And then we want to make sure, did we get it all right? Because we didn't get to speak to everybody. And so that's the opportunity for everybody else to provide that additional input.
So if I could jump in, Andrea, for just a second, I'd just like to reiterate what you've said. When you think about this diagnostic report, think about it, in my mind, in 3 different ways. What did Clarion see when we look at it, and we have worked on Blueprint Boise, and we look at the system of zoning you're using to implement that? What do we notice that strikes us as weird? That hasn't changed in the last year. So we wanted you to have access to that so you have a full picture. The consultants do this all over the country, and they looked at this page and said, that's weird, or that's not going to get you where you're going to go. Not telling you how to get there. We're just telling you this strikes us as unusual. That you really ought to have a discussion. Second thing, part 2 is glitches that staff finds. Every time we write a code, staff understands that page 79 and page 114 can't be true at the same time. Something's got to give, and we haven't sorted out how these conflicting values can be done. That's not going to change either. Those are glitches that happen over time in a regulatory process that, you can call them the weeds, you can call them the details, but they need to be fixed, because it's not fair to have a system of zoning that tries to get you to go left and right at the same time. Frustrating to everybody, or just deliberately vague. I shouldn't have said deliberately, but it's vague. I read it and I'd say, well, I don't know which one of these things I'm supposed to do. So part one, what Clarion sees, that hasn't changed. Part two, what staff notices, that's probably not changed. The part three is what we really want you to jump in on, because we did go around the horn, but you're a new and much broader group of perspectives, and you were deliberately invited here because of that. And so I want to be very clear. If you disagree with what we have heard, either anything we say in there, that's why we're doing that. We want to hear what you say, regardless of what other people said, but you should know what people said a year ago. What citizens of Boise said a year ago might trigger a thought. Oh, I agree with that. Oh, I don't know who said that, but I disagree with that. And so that's why we're not starting over with a blank sheet of paper, because the city of Boise's already paid us to look from our perspective and collected their glitches. The part that's very important and most important is, what do you think? And that's why we're not just saying, so what do you think? We're giving you the thought process as it has evolved so far, and being very clear that when it comes to community values, we're very interested in knowing whether you agree or disagree or want to go off in a different direction from what we heard along the way so far. So thanks.
That's helpful. And I don't know if it's, that's very helpful. And I'm just really glad to know that work that has been done in the past is going to carry over, because those things don't change overnight. And I guess, I'm sort of a project manager by trade. And so I'd really like to understand the timeline that we're all working under. And it doesn't need to be answered today, but sort of the high level timeline that I'm sure was in the consultant's proposal, so that we're just staying on track. And Andrea, I know you're going to keep us on track as much as you can, but just really keep the big picture in mind. So if maybe that's on the drive and I should have known, but if there's just a overall project schedule, that would be really great. And given that those first two parts, Dawn, that you mentioned, and forgive me, I wasn't here last week or last month, but given that those two parts are sort of static at this point, I just wonder if it wouldn't make sense to share those with the group now, so we can kind of start getting our head around it. If the answer is no, because it's still in draft, no problem. I just wanted to put it out there.
I'll let Andrea answer that one. I work for her.
We can get that to you as well. So we'll make sure that we follow up and get you a timeline to that. There was a request for minutes, so we'll go ahead and always do minutes for each meeting, so we know what was discussed and those information. Then we'll also provide some of those, where is our existing population and where is it going? What do we anticipate it to move forward to? So any information that you guys might need, let us know, because oftentimes we can provide it in relatively quickly.
Hey, Andrea, this is Brad. When I joined this thing, I wasn't going to sit on my hands. The whole idea was not to sit on my hands and be quiet. So I wanted to be a voice. So I've been trying to learn a little bit. I've been actually watching some YouTube videos of council meetings. Very riveting, by the way. But what I noticed about planning and zoning was that they were pretty specific about the locations that they were talking about. So we're coming in as an advisory committee, I guess is what we are. We're not really planning and zoning. How do we rewrite zoning if it's so specific to location? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. And maybe that onus goes to us for some education as to how things are. So, we talked about the vision and the mission and our strategic priorities. And then we talked a little bit about the comprehensive plan. So those are kind of all of our goals and the roadmap for us to get there. But now we need the tools. And so the zoning code is going to be really the tools. And You know, you don't have to lose any sleep at night knowing, you know, thinking that you have to write the code and how wide a sidewalk is or any of those things. You know, we have a consultant that we have hired that has those expertise and knowledge on staff, and it's available to us. So they'll be creating drafts for us from the information that they hear from us. And then we're going to be able to identify where we have some areas of concern, like Don had mentioned, that, you know, he's going to point out some areas where, hey, you may need to discuss this. That's where you're going to come in, and we're going to talk about those things, and, you know, what is the right direction for the city of Boise to go in. You know, then, you know, we're also going to hear from the public input, and we'll bring that information to you as well, so that you have it, and so that we can discuss, hey, we've got two different perspectives here, and then it's our job to take that step back and look, hey, are we hitting our mission, our vision, and our strategic goals? We'll evaluate that at that time. So you don't have to worry about the details. We'll be bringing it to you. Then you just have to make sure that they make sense, that you're bringing your personal perspective in and say, hey, no, I've seen that before and it didn't work, and here's why, and let us know.
If I could just add a little bit, when you think of the meetings you're listening to, Brad, I sit on the Denver Planning Board, actually. Most of what we do is changing the map. When you think of zoning, it's on the one hand, a set of rules that apply in different contexts in the city. So it's a rule book, and then it's a map that applies that to the face of the earth. Most of what planning boards do is changing the map over time. So you're probably listening to hearings about that. That is not the nature of what this group is doing. This group is updating or advising on updating the rule book. Do we have the right districts? Do we have the right parking? Is this the right kit of parts to try to be applying to the city over time to achieve Blueprint Boise? So it is the rewriting of the rule book that is the primary focus of this. When you get to rewriting individual maps, that is a secondary thing and very far down the road from now. It's really good to think through the rule book separately from the map. I'm going to say this several times in the process. If I roll out a map, everybody starts looking at, well, I think Sam's property's always been underzoned, and I think this corner has always been badly zoned, and people focus on the place. But the project is to say, before we start talking about the corner of 4th and Main, do we have the right rule book? Is this book aligned with our values? Will it get those 6 priorities done? Let's get the rule book right, so that when we consider changing the map, we have a current set of place types or zone districts or forms, whatever they are. But we now have a kit of parts that aligns with our values. And that's the real goal. So when you're seeing these meetings, you're seeing people apply that rule book to particular sites. But that is really not the core of what is going to go on in this group. So I hope that's helpful.
And then I just wanted to check in and make sure, you know, does anybody have any thoughts that we should part with? You know, and again, if you have any wants or needs or anything like that, you can always call me or email me. I'm always available. And then we also have one attendee that is not our committee member that has been listening. And so we can open it up to her as well. So Diana, if there's anything that you would like to say in regard to that, or any of our committee members as well.
Wow. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Diane Ronayne. I didn't know I was going to be called upon to speak, but first of all, I want to thank all of you for doing this. It's an incredible amount of time and effort and energy, and you are the links that are going to make this important to the people of this city. Many years ago, we had a Boise Futures process that took about 300 people over 6 months to go through the vision for the city. What you're doing is much more technical in a way, but it's as important or more so because there are more people here now, and we have this weird COVID, and we have to do things on
on video. And it's a neat way to meet people, but you don't have that feeling for one-on-one like you do in a regular meeting. And I hope I'm wishing you really, really good luck. Thank you.
Do we have any parting thoughts? Because I do want to be respectful of people's time. Well, if not, I feel good. I think we accomplished a lot. We kind of have established that we have a lot of common goals and that we do have a lot of work cut out for us. And there may be some competing values that are out there, and that's going to require us to take a step back and to look at things a little bit differently than from an individual lens, that we'll be looking from a community lens or even a regional lens. So I hope we can all think about that and come back next time. And we're going to have some exciting information to talk about. And then I'll follow up with you in the next couple of days to make sure that you have meeting minutes that you can share out. And then we can also let you know some of those ways that we will be communicating and some of those dates and schedules as well, so that you have an idea of what's headed our way. All right.
Andrea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, you bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks,
Andrea.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.